Hi, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us for today's meetup. On today's agenda, Scott, Walt, Chris Fox, and Chris Biscaglia will be providing an overview of the solutions we released in the December 2017, as well as the January 2018 releases. And we'll also give you a sneak peek of what we're going to be working on in the first half of 2018. Just a reminder, we'll be recording and posting this meetup on meetups.com. And then throughout the meeting, if you'd like to make comments or chat with other participants, then you can use the chat panel. However, if you'd like to submit a question for the team to answer, then please submit it through the Q&A panel. With that said, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Scott.
Thanks a lot, Heather, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As Heather mentioned, what we'd like to do today is just do a quick recap of several of the new solution offerings we shipped in our holiday release. Our holiday releases, share with you the plans for 2018 so you can use that as a way to plan your work and maybe offer opportunities to partner with us on new solution offerings. I'll give you a sneak peek of some of the work that's coming the first half of 2018 and ultimately get your feedback. So today I'm going to kind of act as MC and kind of guide us through the presentation, but we're going to spend the bulk of our time just showing you some of the work that we shipped in the December and January releases, and ultimately what we have planned for the first half of this year. So let's go ahead and get started by talking a little bit about what we shipped in the holiday releases. So as I mentioned, we had two primary releases around the holiday season. The first in December was really focused on new content. You'll find a whole host of new solution offerings that are organized around capital project planning and crash analysis, or maybe public works workflows more generally. We've been doing a lot of work in the law enforcement space, and Walt's going to share with you today some public crime mapping solutions and work we've done around warming and cooling centers. And Chris has been working actively with planning and development groups on new configurations of ArcGIS, and there's a new solution called Construction Activity Tracker that we shipped in December as well to really help you share construction activity in your community. So December was really focused, as I said, on new offerings, and taking advantage of new capabilities in ArcGIS. And what you'll notice in January were some enhancements to some of our existing 3D solution offerings and some new configurable solutions that replace some of our legacy on-premise JavaScript apps. And we're pretty excited to show you the new public notification solution and the new park locator solution as well too. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Walt now, who's going to start by showing you some of the new work we've been doing around public crime mapping. And then we'll move into the public works area and planning and development. So go ahead, Walt, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Scott. I appreciate that. So I'm just going to share my screen with you folks so you can see what's going on. As Scott mentioned, we've been working on several applications that we released in December. A couple of them that I wanted to cover with the Health and Human Services are the warming and cooling centers. These applications are designed to help the local governments be able to monitor and maintain locations where members of the community have opened up a warming or cooling center. And just for clarification, warming and cooling centers, they differentiate from typical shelters in that they're typically used for short-term heat or cold emergencies. So we're just going to show you a couple of them here. The first one I'm going to show you is the Reporter app. So if you have somebody in the a member of the community can use this configuration of ArcGIS Web Application Builder to come in and add a new facility. So you can see here there's several of them that are located in schools and churches and libraries and so on. So if I click on one of these, you can get the information about that. And this application then can then be used by somebody in that community, like somebody at the school, a principal or somebody like that, to go in and add some information about where they want their warming or cooling center. So the way we've got this configured is you locate your place where you want it to be, some information about the name of it and so on. You can get some contact information. And the idea of this is that someone from the public health department can contact you and follow up on it to see if your facility, wherever you want to open, will meet the standards they need to be able to open it up for the public. So once you've submitted that location, then it will show up in the Warming and Cooling Center Manager app. And this is a configuration of Crowdsource Manager, which allows you to be able to go in and edit one of those facilities. So if we're taking a look at this one here, we can just scroll through the information that was submitted by that original application. And then we can go in and change some of this information. For example, one of them we might want to change is whether or not we want the public to be able to see this yet. Maybe in this case, here happens to be a cooling center, so we don't want to make it visible yet until that time of the season. So there's a number of ways that we can manage what's going on in the community regarding these warming and cooling centers. It allows somebody from the public health to go out, inspect that facility, and approve it. Once it's been approved as either a warming or cooling center, then it can be used by the general public to locate some facility. So I'm just going to go up here and type in an address and see what kind of warming and cooling centers are within a mile of my location here. And I can see I got a few warming and cooling centers here. These are warming centers at the high school. So it gives me a list of that information, somebody that I can contact. So if I know that somebody needs it, either for short-term purposes, then they can contact the school and then it gives you directions about how you can get there. So there's some quick and simple little apps that can be used on the public health website to be able to help public find places for warming and cooling. Now I'm going to change gears a little bit and go over to law enforcement. As Scott mentioned, we have added a couple of new applications for law enforcement for being able to view crime activity. The first one you see on the list there is a public crime app, which is simple configuration of Web App Builder. And it just allows the community, anybody, general public, to come in and search for crimes that have happened in a location near them. So again, we could search for an address here, find all the crimes that are within the specified distance of that particular location. And as you see, as we zoomed in over here, we can get a list of them that are organized by crime category. So we have a number, we have 5 type, what we call property crimes. So like in this case here, we have arson, burglary, and larceny, and so on. We can adjust it and say, well, what do we want to see in a broader view of it if we want to, and it gets us an update then. We can also, as a member of the general public, just want to come in and say, well, all I'm interested in is looking for things like aggravated assaults that happened over maybe the first 6 months of last year, and then a certain time of the day, like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So we can do that. We can find out what's going on in our community. It's a nice application to have. Lastly, you can do is if you desire and you find a crime that's happened near you, you can turn on the imagery and zoom in to see where that occurred. So it's a way for law enforcement agencies to be able to put this information up on their website and share it out with the general public. And of course, they can configure the app however they like. Another app that we released at the same time is called the Neighborhood Crime Reports. And this also is a configuration of Web App Builder that's used by community leaders, sometimes the media, or anybody that wants to be able to generate a historic report of crimes that have happened in a given neighborhood, or community, district, or just a area around their house. So a couple ways that you can use this app is simply over here on the right side. You could just simply come over here and type in the type of reporting district that you're looking for. In this case, this happens to be a neighborhood called Downtown. It's giving me a list of all those crimes. And then if I want to, I can just click on the report. Here is the list over here. It gives me the date and time when it occurred. Again, you can configure this however you like. You can also download into a CSV file if you need to share that with somebody, or you can just generate a report. And this would be a hard copy report then that can be given off to somebody else. One of the things this helps with is a FOIA request, or Freedom of Information Act. A lot of law enforcement agencies spend a lot of time with their staff supporting those FOIA requests, and this makes it a lot easier for them to support that. A couple other things that you've probably seen already is that as I zoom in and zoom out, you see there's a couple of graphs over here on the left. We've broken these down by the crimes by day, so you can take a look at them and see what day of the week a particular crime happened, and also the crime by the hour of day. And of course, you can slide it and do what you want to with it. Like the last app that we showed, you can also filter them. There's a number of filters that have been pre-configured here in this one, and in this case, it's crimes by type. Again, we're going to search for a list of crimes. In this case, it's aggravated assault, but we could pick anything off the list. And then a certain time of the year or date, and then the time of day. And again, we can change this date. And it looks like we just have one crime that occurred in that area that was an aggravated assault in that time frame. So it shows us, what we're looking for. And then, of course, we can generate a report for it as well, or download it. So that's kind of a high-level overview of some of the apps that we have released in December for both public health and for law enforcement, including the crime analysis and neighborhood reports. I will stop my sharing here and turn it over to Chris Fox. He's going to share with us a little bit about what he's been working on for Public Works.
Thanks, Walt. So in terms of Public Works, we had quite a few new solutions released, as well as some enhanced solutions. So some of a set of solutions I want to focus on first revolve around reducing traffic fatalities. And these are collections of maps and apps that you can be used to identify hazards along the roadway or dangerous traffic behaviors that could lead to traffic fatalities. The first solution that we enhanced in the December release was our crash analysis solution, which is a configuration of ArcGIS Pro that can be used by public works agencies to analyze crash data and identify streets and intersections where there are concentrations of serious and fatal crashes. In many communities, a high percentage of severe injury or fatal crashes occur on a small percentage of the streets, and this is often called the high injury network. So this analysis can be used to help focus your capital improvements on the streets and intersections that have the highest concentration of severe or fatal crashes in an effort to reduce those in the community. So what we provide with the crash analysis solution is a toolbox with a set of tools. A new tool that we added in the December release is a tool that leverages the Federal Highway Administration's methodology for performing a network screening. And this tool allows you to calculate the crash frequency and crash rate of incidents along a roadway or an intersection. And what's nice about this tool is it requires very little data input for you to run the analysis. At a minimum, all you need is the location of the crash or location of the crashes and streets or intersections that you want to analyze against. So I can provide the streets, I can provide the locations of my car crashes. I need to specify the time range that the crashes occurred over, the maximum distance that a crash can snap to the nearest street or intersection. I can provide a weight field, so if I want to weight the severity of the crash, depending on whether it was a fatal or an injury crash. And I can also normalize by average traffic volume, so the number of cars that travel on average throughout the day along the street or through the intersection. So when I run this, it would produce an output. It takes a couple minutes to run, but let me just go ahead and show the output. So here is the analysis run against intersections. So the red have the highest frequency of crashes that occur at those locations, and the yellow, the red represent the top 20% of intersections that have crashes, and then the yellow are the next 20%. And then I can also look at the streets. So I'm isolating those street segments and intersections that have the highest incidence of crashes in the community. So really easy analysis for you to run. The next solution that I want to show is the High Injury Network Locator, which is a configuration of web app builder for ArcGIS, and it can be used by the general public to locate streets and intersections where there are these concentrations of serious or fatal crashes. So Public Works can deploy this application to help educate the public on where those locations are in the community. So I can click in the map, or I can search for my address, and I can find those streets or intersections around me that have the highest occurrence of serious injury or fatal crashes. And then I can click on individual ones and get some details about how frequently there are these crashes. The Fatal and Serious Injury Dashboard is a configuration of operations dashboard for ArcGIS that can be used by the general public to locate crashes that resulted in a serious injury or fatality. So this application is typically deployed by public works agencies to educate the community on the severity of traffic collisions and the importance of safe driving, biking, and walking behaviors. So this dashboard really allows me to explore those crashes. And as I pan around, you can see the counts and the graphs update to reflect the incidents that occurred in those areas. I also have some filters. So if I'm interested in pedestrian-related incidents and only fatal crashes, I can set some filters and further reduce the amount of information that I'm seeing in the map to really hone in on those things. The last application I want to highlight is not a new release, but it is a it is a companion app that really goes together as part of this comprehensive solution, which is Vision Zero. And it's a configuration of crowdsourced reporter, and it allows the general public to identify traffic safety problems in the community. So they can report traffic transportation hazards as well as dangerous traffic behaviors. So Vision Zero is typically deployed by public works agencies to enlist feedback from bikers, drivers, and pedestrians using public streets. And this feedback, along with the crash data, is analyzed and used to educate the community, devise new enforcement methods, and promote engineering practices that can reduce traffic fatalities. The next set of applications that I want to briefly touch on and really promote is our solutions around maximizing capital investments, or work around capital projects. So these are a collection of maps and apps that can be used by public works staff to define capital projects, review proposed projects, develop a CIP and communicate that to the public, track the project performance and the status, and then ultimately share that status with key stakeholders and the general public. So for example, one of the applications that we have here at the end of sharing the project status is the capital project locator. And this is a configuration of web app builder for ArcGIS that can be used by the general public and other interested parties to review the status of capital projects under construction in their community. So I can search for my address or click in the map, and it's going to do a search and find all those current capital projects and give me an overview of the projects by type. So I can look at, in this example, I can look at a park project, and I can get some information about that project. I can see what its status is, some details, the schedule, when it was planned to start and when it actually did, what phase it's in, and how is the project doing in terms of budget. And we have some nice behavior in here depending on whether we're over or under budget. We're able to present that information, as well as any contact information if you're interested in learning more about that project. So the thing I really want to drive home with these applications is it's a comprehensive set of applications that take you from the beginning, where you're just in development or planning phase, where you're planning on the projects, how you can review those projects, move them into the CIP, track the progress, and ultimately share that status with the community. So that's an overview of some of the applications for public works. Now I'm going to hand it over to Chris Biscaglia, who's going to discuss some of the new and enhanced solutions in planning and development.
All right, can you hear me, Scott?
Now we got you. Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So my name's Chris, and I'm going to talk about some of our applications around planning and development that we worked on, as also neighborhood stabilization. And the first app that I wanted to talk about briefly is Photo Survey. And if you haven't seen this application already, it's a JavaScript app and configuration of ArcGIS that allows you to collect street-level photos and then conduct very focused property surveys. So you're seeing the Photo Survey application here. This application could also be crowdsourced out to your community to help you actually perform those very focused condition surveys. So the first thing you see when you log into the application is a street level photo. You might also see a collection of photos at the bottom that you can scroll through and view in an existing property, and that property is actually associated to a parcel. And if there's something like an obstruction, like a car, I can move to the next photo and see a better photo of the property and then perform the survey. So one of the things we've done to enhance the application is to allow for something we're calling contingent or conditional questions. So for instance, if there's a structure and you answer yes, you get a series of other questions to answer based on that answer. So that's one of the enhancements that a lot of folks asked us about. We added in, so that's a nice new enhancement there. We also allow you to filter now the web map that drives the application. So behind the scenes of Photo Survey, there's actually a web map, and that web map can be filtered down now to almost the neighborhood level if you want to help you focus even more that condition survey. So that also supports filtered web map content. And we've also made a series of enhancements to the processing tools and the way that you actually publish the questions in the survey here to make it easier for you to configure that. So those are some enhancements we've done around photo survey. Later on, I'm going to talk about some additional things that we're working on to support the entire property condition survey. And we'll talk about that later as to what's coming here for this app. The next application I want to talk about is the, Scott mentioned this. This is an application, it's a configuration of web app builder for ArcGIS that allows the general public to track individual building permits and also just general construction activity. So what you can do with the application is simply click on a permit and get information about it. But you can also search on individual permit IDs. For instance, if you are applying for a permit or you have applied for a permit and you have a tracking number, you can type that number in and get really detailed information about that permit and where it is along the process. So in this case, if I just open the permit request, you would have seen the status be open. As soon as it's under review, you can see that as well. So it kind of tracks the permit as it kind of moves through the process. So that's construction activity tracker. I can also just click on the map or search for an address, and I can get all construction activity around that location. So here I can click on the map. It creates a buffer around that particular location and tells me about all of the construction activity that's happening around that location. So it's kind of a nice way to see kind of what's happening within the community. You might also be interested in areas that you've seen existing construction activity, you want to know more about it. You can use this application to do that. So that's construction activity tracker. Moving on, this is an application called public notification. You might have already seen this as a on-premise JavaScript application. We've now moved the public notification app to be a configuration of web app builder for ArcGIS. And this can be used by city or county staff to identify a collection of properties and create mailing labels for owners and occupants. So you might have done this already with the existing application. You might have another app that does this, but this is a very simple JavaScript app using web app builder that allows you to configure it really with one click using our deployment tools. You can load your content in and just be off and running. So in the try live example, which you can see on our site, we have it set up for searching by address or tax parcels themselves. So I can go in here and type a tax parcel number and get a list of matching numbers. I can click on one of those parcels. And in this case, you can see it's a big linear parcel here. I can also apply a search distance around that parcel, in this case 300 feet, which is also something you can configure in the app, and then notify either tax parcel owners, site address information. So this application allows you to also use points or tax parcels, and then create a very focused or very simple mailing list, either in PDF format or CSV. So in this case, we'll just create a PDF output and then take a look at that. And you can see that we've created a nice mailing label sheet. And this is also following the standard Avery label formats that you're probably accustomed to using. So that is public notification. We urge you to take a look at the try live for this app and see kind of all the things that you can do with it. It also supports things like related tables. So if you have postal addresses in a related table, it also supports that. Just moving on. Park Locator is another configuration of web app builder for ArcGIS that is could be used by park departments, planning agencies, or other agencies to promote parks and recreation within their community. So very similar to the construction activity tracker, I can go in, type in an address if I want to find parks and recreation activities around a certain address, or simply click on a place, for instance, Naperville, and I can see all of the parks that are within that distance of that location. I can, of course, grow that a little bigger if I'm willing to travel a little bit further and see additional parks and recreation facilities. This also includes trails, and we even put things like golf courses in here too. So it's very configurable on what you want to put into the park layer. So it's a very simple app for the general public to find parks and recreation from within a certain distance of an address or where I live or a place. And that's Park Locator. I'll switch it back over to Scott.
Thanks, Chris. So let's just pause for a minute, Heather, now, and take any questions that came in about the content that we shipped in the December and January releases this year.
Sure. Andre has a question about the public notification app and whether it's available in the deployment tool.
It is, yeah. So the question was about the public notification application. That's just available with the current deployment tools. You'll need to load some data into it. So it's an application that requires, I showed parcels. You could have site address information. The nice thing about it is it doesn't require anything else but that deployment item. So you get an application, the web map, and the feature layers to use to power the app. You don't have to worry about publishing geoprocessing services or anything like that. It just works the way it is.
Okay. And Charles has a question, is the website down? And yes, we know that the website is down right now, and we've contacted the correct people, so hopefully it will be
Perfect
back
timing,
up.
Heather.
I know,
Perfect
exactly.
timing.
I know.
Yeah.
And then Christopher had a question, are these configurations of the Near Me widget? So I don't know who wants to take that.
Sure, I can take that. Yeah, I mean, you saw several examples of configurations of the Near Me widget, the park locator kind of being the last example that Chris showed. And one of the things Chris didn't highlight is one of the enhancements we made to the park locator is you can actually filter those parks, right? So you get the result set, and then I could go in and say, just show me parks that have a playground maybe, or something like that. But yeah, that was a configuration of Near Me. Chris showed the capital project locator. That as well was a configuration of Near Me. So you probably saw several examples of the Near Me widget in action today and those configurations.
And that seems to be all the questions for now.
Okay. All right, so let's keep going and talk a little bit now about our plans for the first half of 2018. And if I were to summarize the work we're doing this first half of the year, it really falls into two categories. The first is some work we have underway to modernize many of our existing solutions and just simplify the deployment. And we've hit on that a couple times today, how you can leverage the solutions deployment tool to quickly lay these down. And the second aspect is we do have a whole new set of solution offerings we're working on in new domains and with new partner agencies we've been working with. So let's just dive into this a little bit deeper. So we are actively working on a set of new, of modernizing, I should say, some existing solution offerings. And what we're trying to do is really a couple things. One is reduce the dependency on our custom JavaScript applications. Chris showed you the park locator and public notification solutions. And historically, you know, those would require custom JavaScript applications be deployed on your web servers when you deploy them in your organization. And we're really trying to simplify all of that and increase the capabilities within Web App Builder so you can quickly deploy them with our, an ArcGIS Online organization, for example. So we have a few remaining JavaScript applications left, and we're going to kind of get rid of those and make them configurations of Web App Builder, much like you saw today. We also have a great deal of work going on to modernize the operations dashboard configurations that we've provided historically. Probably 20 to 25 different configurations of the older JavaScript application that's now being replaced with a new operations dashboard that was released in late 2017. And while we're doing that, you can see, right, we're actively leveraging ArcGIS Pro and the feature layers and web deployment pattern. We're adding support for ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online organizational accounts, so you guys have the flexibility to deploy those in a SaaS environment or in an on-premise environment with ArcGIS Enterprise. And we'll ultimately, as we're doing this, you know, update any layers and associated cartography to take advantage of a lot of the new symbols that Heather and team have been working on to really modernize the maps that we provide. So that's really a big part of our work right now, is just try to modernize the existing solutions we have and make them current with our current ArcGIS capabilities and ultimately simplify their deployment. So, you know, we've talked a lot about the automated deployment options that are available, and that really is the primary deployment approach we'd suggest you leverage, but it is the easiest way to start to take advantage of these solutions in your organization. And for about a year now, we've had an ArcGIS Pro-based add-in called the Solution Deployment Tool that helps you discover solutions that are available and deploy them into your ArcGIS organization, and then to begin to configure them and load content into them as well. And that for us is really one stop along a larger journey where the solutions are actually just part of your ArcGIS organization natively, and you will not even need ArcGIS Pro to deploy them in your organization. So we're actively working on capabilities within ArcGIS Online organizations initially that allow you to discover these solutions and ultimately lay them down and begin to take advantage of them in your ArcGIS organizations. And finally, the other big part of this work is the work we're doing to actually deliver new solution offerings. And we've got several areas we're focused on the first half of this year. Chris mentioned neighborhood stabilization or blight remediation, depending on what part of the country you're on, right? Or you're from, I should say, right? You'll see it here mentioned a couple of different ways. We're actively working on some new solution offerings that help you identify neighborhoods that may be tipping in a positive or negative direction. So imagine being able to continuously evaluate property conditions and other characteristics that give you indications on whether or not values are tipping, maybe in a very positive direction, which could drive people out of the community, or in a negative direction that may maybe cause urban blight or other types of code enforcement concerns. Chris is going to show you some work we've been doing around property condition assessments and using new artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities. We're also beginning to think about how we can evolve and grow the election solutions we have. So we'd be interested if any of the communities out there that have leveraged our solutions to date, find gaps or see holes in those solution offerings and have ideas on how we might be able to enhance the solutions we have. In the public works space, we'll be working on some new right-of-way permitting solutions that we'll give you a sneak peek of today. And Walt's been actively working on enhancing the law enforcement solutions we have with a whole new set of tools around crime analytics, and in the fire space to help with preparedness and flood response activities. Another big area that really cuts across all of local government is performance management. And we've had the good fortune of partnering with the city of Austin, and some other communities have given us some feedback on how we can really move performance management beyond simple dashboards and gadgets that show counts, to really location-based performance management that allows department or kind of vertical leadership in an individual business unit understand the metrics that they're responsible for, communicate performance of those metrics to stakeholders like council and commissioners and maybe city managers or county executives, and then ultimately share how you're doing with performance to the general public. And so, how can we really leverage location to communicate performance in a community and ultimately allow communities not only see how they're doing as a whole, like as a city as a whole, but ultimately maybe compare one neighborhood to another. And finally, public engagement is a big area we've been focused on. You saw several examples of solutions we've developed to help you guys enhance public engagement opportunities. We're going to continue to work on new public engagement solutions and essentially help you take advantage of ArcGIS Hub as a new capability within ArcGIS. And also we're beginning to think about what the next generation of our crowdsourcing apps look like. And you saw at least one or two configurations of Crowdsource Reporter today that we leverage to help mine data from the public and use that in internal workflows. So we've got kind of a full portfolio of things we're working on across many different domains, and I would certainly encourage you guys, if you're interested in any of these topics, to reach out to us because we'd love to engage additional partners in the work we're doing. So what we'd like to do now is kind of stop and give you guys a sneak peek of some of the work we're already got actively underway. And I'm going to start with Chris Fox, who's going to show you some of the right-of-way permitting work, and then he'll turn it over to Chris and give you guys a sneak peek of some of the things we've been doing with AI and machine learning. So go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Scott. So right-of-way permitting was a project that we worked on with the city of Boston, and we wanted to develop a collection of maps and apps that could be used by public works staff to permit, coordinate, review, and promote activities occurring within the public right-of-way. So the first solution is the right-of-way permit application, and it's a configuration of Survey 123 for ArcGIS that can be used by property owners or a property owner's authorized representative to apply for a permit to construct, operate, use, and/or maintain a facility within the right-of-way. So capturing this permit information along with the location of the proposed work helps public work agencies streamline internal review activities and promote the work that's occurring within the community. So in this form, I'm going to provide, as the applicant, I'm going to provide information about myself. If there's going to be a contractor who's actually going to be performing the work, I can provide that as well. In some cases, the contractor applies on behalf of the applicant, and they can just use the same information as the applicant. Some information about the job: where is the work going to occur? The type of work, for example, a temporary use permit where I'm going to be having a special event where I might need to close down a roadway would be an example of a right-of-way permit that I could submit. But we're leveraging some of Survey 123's capabilities to provide dynamic or conditional responses based on your answers. So that's some nice capabilities. You can provide any site plan or construction drawings as an attachment, the proposed dates of the work. If a lane closure is required, then it's going to require you to provide a traffic control plan. How are you going to reroute the traffic that would normally use that, that street or lane? And finally, a signature that you can plop in, which is added as an attachment to the permit, and just makes that official application as part of this process. The next solution is the right-of-way permit manager solution, which is a configuration of crowdsource manager, and it can be used by public works agencies to manage right-of-way permit applications and ensure that all the relevant information has been submitted prior to moving the permit to an internal review. So for example, I can filter here in the application by a status, so I can take a look at all my applications that are currently submitted. I can then click on the individual row, it highlights it in the map, and then I see some details about that application, who the applicant was, the contractor. I can see any attachments, such as the signature and the traffic control plan. If everything looks good, I can go ahead and edit that, that application. I can move it to staff review, add any comments here, and save. What that does in the process is now it moves it to our next solution, which is the right-of-way permit review application, which is a configuration of crowdsourced polling that can be used by government agencies, other organizations within the government, to review right-of-way permit applications and offer their comments during the process. So I can click on an item in the map or in the list. I can see the details. I can see any attachments associated with it. And I can add my comments. So I can see here from the planning and development group that Bill Gregory had no concerns with this. Let's say that I work in transportation. I can add my details, any comments. If I need more information, I would include that in any instructions that I need from the original applicant. Or I can mark it as approved and submit my comment. And this just allows other groups within the organizations to offer their comments before moving it to the next phase of the permitting process, which is public comment. So the right-of-way permit public comment application is a configuration of crowdsourced polling, and very similar to permit review, we're using the same application, but this is intended for the general public or other interested parties to review the permit application, and it lets community members express concerns about the proposed developments in lieu of attending a council or commission meeting. So oftentimes you would have a public hearing or a public meeting about some of these permit applications. You can make this application available to the public, and that gives them the opportunity to go ahead and add their feedback or comments on the proposed activity rather than attending the meeting, or in addition to attending the meeting. They would both be opportunities there. The right-of-way permit locator application is a configuration of web app builder for ArcGIS, and it can be used by the general public to find pending and approved right-of-way permits in the community. So this is, again, we're using the Near Me widget in Web App Builder, and I can search for an address or I can click on the map. And what it's going to return to me are permits that are either at board review or are ready for public comment or have been approved. So we're advertising the permits that I can take action on. So if I go in and see some details, I have a quick link here that I can open up the comment app, and it takes me to that item, and I can add my comments on that particular permit. Or I can just see the permits that have already been approved and get more information about when the work's going to occur, and any details on that particular permit. The final application is the right-of-way permit dashboard, and it's a configuration of operations dashboard, and it can be used by public works executives to monitor the status of right-of-way permits in the community. So these are all the permits that are in the process. I can get a count, I can see a list of all the details. But what's nice about this application is I can start to do some filtering and focus on some of the permits that might need some attention from me or users within my organization. So for example, I wanted to focus on everything that's submitted and has been submitted older than 30 days. So it's been in the submitted state for over 30 days. So these are things that haven't started to move through the process. So what's happening with these permits? Is there anything I can do to move these along and get these to the right people so they can start taking action on it? So I can zoom to it, get the pop-up, see all the same details that I had before, as well as any attachments that are associated with that. So this was a sneak peek at some of the applications we're developing in terms of right-of-way permitting. We're really excited about these new apps, and I think it shows a great pattern that you could adopt within your organization for many permitting workflows, because a lot of these same workflows apply in a lot of different scenarios. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris again, who's going to give a sneak peek of some upcoming solutions for property condition assessment using AI and machine learning.
All right, thanks, Chris. Just kind of talking about this in the context of the photo survey application that we talked about earlier. This is some new work we're doing. It's kind of the next generation or next phase to photo survey, which is really around performing a very focused property condition survey. And so what you're seeing here, I'm in ArcGIS Pro, and we've been working closely with Microsoft on this solution as well, so we'll get into that in a little bit. But what you're seeing is the photo points layer that's actually used to drive the photo survey application. So it's the same layer that has all of the street level photos that you've captured by driving your city. And what we're actually going to try to do now is use Microsoft's AI tools to see if we can preemptively look at the photos and then understand more about them and see if we can actually start identifying blight or indicators of blight like overgrowth, damaged structures, or graffiti and things like that, and actually spit out or create a very a dashboard of results that can help you identify those areas and maybe focus in the activity instead of having to canvass the entire city with something like photo survey, which is basically a manual survey by looking at some photos. So what you can do with these tools in Setup Pro is basically identify the blight category that you're concerned with. So in this case, I'm concerned with overgrowth, maybe graffiti, and boarded windows or doors. And you apply your Microsoft credentials. So this uses an Azure solution called Custom Vision for this prototype. And you basically put in here your keys that are generated from that, that AI toolkit. And this will actually cycle through the photo survey photos and then calculate some probability scores of these blight categories. So it'll tell you what percentage the tools think there is overgrowth, graffiti, or boarded windows. So from there, it actually creates some attributes, some simple attributes on the photo survey layer. And in this case, we're looking at those specific categories. So graffiti, overgrowth, and boarded windows and doors. So this is just an operations dashboard, kind of reviewing the results. And this is actually showing all overgrown properties with a 60% or greater probability of overgrowth. And so I can cycle through each one of those. I can flash them on the map. I can bring up the actual photo for that property. So since this is just a photograph attachment to the point location on the ground, we can bring up the photograph. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Let's not do it that way. But here's the photograph of the overgrown property. I can click on each one of these, interrogate them, review the results, and it's also giving me an overall probability score for each one of those properties to tell me if it has this particular category of blight, or in this case, overgrowth. Same thing for boarded windows and graffiti. The next phase to this is to actually use the results to operationalize folks in the field. So imagine if you had a workforce assignment now created from this probability model that sends staff in the field to actually review each one of these properties that have high probabilities of these categories. And also things like just create a general probability map. In this case, we're just looking at a heat map of where we might want to focus activities based on those categories. This is actually showing you an overall blight score based on these 3 categories just averaged. So you're seeing some hotter spots maybe that you want to focus some activity in. If it's for overgrowth, you might want to send code enforcement folks out in the field in these areas. So that's some of the initial work that we're doing in terms of trying to kind of auto-detect blight or categories of information from street level imagery. And what we're also doing is creating a image library that can be used to help you do this analysis. And as part of that, we want cities to help us actually make that model better so that they can contribute their street level photos and make the overall blight probability model better. So if you're interested in this work, or maybe you've tried photo survey or you've collected a bunch of photos, we can take a look at them and enhance the existing model that we have, which is really just a sample set of a few cities that we've worked with to kind of help grow and make this solution better over time. So if you're interested in that, please let us know. We're looking for early adopters of the technology, and we can give you more details if you follow up. And that's some of the early work on AI and property blight detection.
So Chris, what I think is really interesting about this, if you compare and contrast like the blight or code enforcement process now in a city, right? What happens? The city waits for a complaint, typically, right? Or they may have canvases that they go out and do. In some communities, we've heard that. And then they selectively, right, go after that from an enforcement perspective. What's interesting about this is it flips the whole process on end, right? It kind of takes a comprehensive look at the entire community, finds those hotspots, and then allows you to target enforcement activities that way in a more uniform way, and then ultimately kind of focus your resources in a more effective way too. So I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, and I think that if we get more cities on board and helping us kind of refine it, we can make the model even better to help make this more accurate over time.
For sure. Okay. So let's just wrap up with kind of a few closing thoughts, and then we can take any final questions, Heather, that we may have. So we gave you a sneak peek today of some of the work we've been doing in right-of-way permitting and neighborhood revitalization. And we've got 2 primary releases planned for the spring. The first is one in April, where you'll see the right-of-way permitting solutions that Chris showed today be shipped and available for you to take advantage of. And we'll also be delivering a whole host of enhanced solution offerings that we've been working on as well. So new configurations of Ops Dashboard for ArcGIS and new configurations of Web App Builder that replace the kind of remaining JavaScript applications we have. So that'll be our focus for April. In June, you can expect to see some of the other work we talked about, neighborhood early warning, performance management, crime analytics, will be our primary focus. Some of the machine learning stuff that Chris just showed will also probably be a primary part of that early warning work we do in neighborhood revitalization. And so you'll kind of see these 2 major release vehicles as a focus of the content we deliver this, at least the first half of this year. In addition, right, we have some upcoming meetups this spring that kind of complement the work that we showed you today and kind of capstone the plans for at least the first half of this year. Chris is going to do a meetup in about 2 weeks that really dives deeply into the new public notification solution and helps you configure it around many of the workflows he mentioned earlier today. In April, Walt will be doing a deeper dive into the public crime maps and helping you configure those in your organization. And then in May, Chris Fox will do the crash and traffic planning maps and apps and really help you guys begin to take advantage of those in your organization. And then we'll do a quick recap of kind of the April and June releases right before the user conference, talk about some of the events we've got at the user conference this year, and really use that as a way to get together and kind of talk more about the solution offerings we have. So with that, hopefully you found the sneak peek of what we're working on valuable. And as I said, and both Chris has mentioned, right? If you are interested in working with us, we'd love to do it. Now's a great time to get engaged because we're either very close with the prototypes and nearly dev complete, or just now beginning to work on some of these offerings as well too. So Heather, we'll stop there. That's kind of the end of all the content we have for the day, and maybe we can take some questions that came in.
Sure. One question is for, excuse me, Chris Biscaglia about the public notification app and whether it will be available in Portal, or I guess Enterprise 10.6.
Yeah, I saw this question come in. So currently, the public notification widget and application only work on ArcGIS Online. So that won't be until a 10.6.1 release, I believe. Then it'll start showing up in Portal. That is the plan. It just isn't there yet. And so you'll be seeing that kind of later on.
Okay.
And that's a good point, Chris. That's the general pattern for all new widgets and enhancements to existing widgets, right? They make their way to ArcGIS Online first, and then subsequent releases of ArcGIS Enterprise.
Yeah. Thanks for looking at that, though. It's definitely something that you wouldn't have seen if you're using Portal with the deployment tools.
Right.
And a second question from Andre. Are there any solutions in AR?
Augmented reality, I think he's talking about. I would guess.
I'm not sure.
We'll assume that's the case.
He said yes. Yep.
Okay. We don't have anything yet. We've been looking at that. You know, Chris showed some of the AI and machine learning stuff we've been thinking about. We've also been thinking about natural language interfaces. So, you know, voice to text, or however you want to say it, and how that might be a way you can interact with solutions. But we haven't looked at augmented reality yet. I know the guys on the utilities team have been thinking about it, and they may have even done some prototypes, but we haven't touched anything yet.
Okay. And then Charles has a question. He would like to see some solutions on smoke detector apps, I'm guessing.
Well, when I saw that question, I don't know if you're still on. Well, the one thing that came to mind for me is maybe this fire safety survey solution, right? That's designed, I think, Charles, that's designed for what you're looking for, is the home safety inspections that fire departments will do, and in some cases, they may distribute smoke detectors or batteries for smoke detectors. You may want to take a look at that one. It's called Fire Safety Survey.
Yeah, it has a web map for a collector configuration and a dashboard.
Yep.
Which will we be updating.
Great. And then another question from Katie, where does the traffic data come from? I'm not sure.
Chris, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm guessing that's for the crash analysis. So, you know, it kind of varies. I think a lot of that times in our conversations, for example, that solution, the tool was really developed in partnership with the city of Austin. A lot of times, the traffic collision data is aggregated by the state, and local municipalities have the opportunity to kind of harvest some of that data from the state as a way to feed that in. But sometimes cities have that information. So it just kind of varies from location to location where who is maintaining that crash information.
Yeah, Chris, you said it pretty well. I mean, typically that stuff comes into the records, CAD and record system first, right, as an incident.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it gets sent up to the state for aggregation and sometimes redistributed through open data or some other means back down to the counties and cities.
Janice has a question. Are the solutions available in ArcGIS Online? If so, Are there limitations in ArcGIS Online versus on-premise portal? I don't know how you want to answer that.
So the solutions themselves aren't in ArcGIS Online yet. You can use the solutions deployment tool, though, to deploy them to an ArcGIS Online organization, essentially using that as your content management system. And there are many that are also in ArcGIS Enterprise as well, too, or at least can be deployed to an ArcGIS Enterprise organization right now. All of the kind of what they're supported on is documented on the solution site. Longer term, our goal is to ship them directly in the organizations themselves, so you guys can just basically turn those capabilities on and not have to worry about going through ArcGIS Pro to deploy them in your organizations. And that's something we're actively working on.
Okay. She said thank you. I think that's all of the questions for now.
Heather, I think Andre had one more about Campus Locator. What does he wants us to include the Campus Locator in the deployment tool? Maybe is that what that might be what he's getting at.
I didn't see that one.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, he wants it in the deployment tool. So we're thinking about that. There's actually a team at Esri working on a new offering called ArcGIS Indoors, which will take a lot of those campus workflows, Andre, that we supported initially in the campus editing map and the campus place locator and make them available with ArcGIS. So we're kind of keeping an eye on that and coordinating with those guys.
Sorry, the notification app is available.
Public notification?
Yeah.
That one is in the deployment tool, right? But I think he was talking about campus locator. Yep. So, but yeah, if not, Andre, shoot us a note and let us know if that we're not. We're both. Okay.
And I also just put a link to the campus locator in the chat so everybody can see what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think you must have responded to him because I was like, I don't see that question. So I was thrown off. Sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, Andre, you're exactly right. The indoor stuff is designed exactly for the facilities management space, campuses, big things like that. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. And Darren, basically, is this recording, is the video or meetup about the deployment solutions works and how that workflow is?
Chris Fox, didn't we do, I mean, I know we've shown it in previous meetups.
Yep.
Do you remember? I don't think we did one specifically on the deployment tool. If we did, I forgot. Maybe we did last year, but definitely.
I think we did.
Okay.
Have a specific one on the deployment tool.
Heather, maybe you could look in our YouTube channel and just see if there is one on the deployment tool and that automated deployment approach, and then we can stick that in the meetup.
Yep.
On the meetup page. Okay.
Absolutely, can do that.
And maybe when we do, hey, Chris Pascalio, maybe at the next meetup when we do public notification, we can hit it then too. So you'll see it, probably a heavy dose of it this spring when we show you guys when we do a deeper dive into each of these solutions we talked about as well.
Yeah, and the public notification one will be good because it'll show like that, how to get your content, load it all up into the solution offering as well.
Yep.
Christopher has another question. Is the deployment tool available in GitHub?
The add-in is not publicly visible, but basically the deployment tool behind the scenes is using Python to copy content between orgs, and that logic is now in the ArcGIS Python API, which is available to download. I think 1.3 came out in December. So if you're interested in being able to copy maps and apps between orgs or within an org, there's a new capability in that Python API called clone items that allows you to pass in one or more items and clone them between orgs. So if you're interested in that capability, that is available.
Okay, I think that is. Jeff just asked, is the presentation recorded and available for replay? And yep, We're recording it right now, and it will be up on the Meetup site. And once it's up, I'll notify everybody about it. Okay, is there any last words, Scott, that you'd like to mention?
No, thanks everyone for all the great questions today. And as I said, don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like to talk about any of the existing solution offerings or maybe some of the work we have planned for the first half of this year. And thanks again for all the feedback as well.
Cool. Yeah, we look forward to hearing from you at our next meetup, which is Thursday, February 22nd, where we'll be providing an overview on how to configure the new public notification app. And until then, have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.